Hi, everybody. This is Danny Lilker, and you are listening to Agoraphobic News.
Hate technology and all that comes with it.
Yes, but it's good. It's killing technology, so.
Like
Um,
Voivod.
yes, yeah, that's what you have to think. So, yes, I'm doing well. I'm home here. We had a lot of snow recently, so we're just relaxing and staying inside on a quiet Sunday here.
Yeah. And like New York is probably one of the coldest cities in America. Is that correct?
No, not really. See, New York City is on the coast, on the East Coast, so it's not as cold, but I don't live in New York City. I live more inside the state in Rochester, New York, where it is actually quite colder, but I think the coldest city in America is probably Minneapolis, Minnesota,
Aha.
because of its location. Very cold. I have lots of Scandinavians move there.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
So you guys reformed the nuclear assaults. How did that happen, and what are your plans for the future?
Well, with nuclear assault, we are only a little bit active. We've decided to only do shows in places that we really haven't played in a very long time because we've been saying for 3 years now, Final Assault tour, we're not going to play here again. And then if we come back a year later, then we look stupid and look like some, Ozzy Osbourne marketing technique or something. So we are only going to take offers from places in locations and cities and countries, whatever, that we have not visited for a long time.
Yeah, awesome. And that would be which countries?
Well, it's also, if it's a very big country, it depends on inside the country. We're going to Brazil, I believe, in April, and we're playing a festival way up in the very north of it, in a town, in a city called Recife,
Awesome.
and then in October we are going to play a festival in Stockholm because we have not played Stockholm for 30 years. So, and just things like that.
Awesome, man. Awesome. And what are the plans for the upcoming release? I mean, do you guys have any plan to go in the studio or whatever?
No, we're just going to be lazy and just play the stuff that people know from the mid to late 80s, from the records like Game Over and Hansel with Care and Survive. We're pretty aware that most people are very familiar with that stuff, and we think it's fine just to play the good old stuff. We did release one EP called Pounder a couple of years ago
Yeah, yeah, I
that
remember
was
that.
in the old school style, but we could hear between songs people yelling for this title and that title, and we think it's fine just to play 99% old stuff and everyone's satisfied, and so we're just going to do that. That's the easy way.
Yeah, and are you guys maybe going to play in Serbia again?
It's indeed possible because we've only played Serbia once,
At X.
so it would be cool to come back. I mean, I've never played in the capital. I've only played in Novi Sad at the Exit Festival.
Yeah.
So maybe if there's an opportunity to play a show in Belgrade, but I don't know. It depends what opportunities arise.
Awesome, man. And who came up with the name Nuclear Assault?
That was me a very long time ago. I came up with the name of the bands because at this time I wanted to have a name that was very powerful and realistic. There was a lot of bands doing a kind of occult thing, and I liked all that stuff, but I wanted to have something. I was getting into hardcore, and I wanted a name that was terrifying, but also nothing, you can't hide from it either.
Yeah.
If you don't believe in God or Satan, then scary black metal stuff will have no effect on you. But a nuclear assault is a reality that nobody can escape.
And how crazy were the 80s? I mean, that's the time when Cold War reached its peak in terms of nuclear weapons and whatnot.
It was certainly an intense time back then with uh, Reagan, and of course there was a happy ending in
Yeah.
1989. But
Yeah.
before that, yeah, of course there was a lot of posturing and what they call saber rattling, and you worry about this. But everything worked out well, and I really hope it continues because think we have a big political problem in America right now that's rather obvious. So,
I mean,
yeah.
the whole world is messed up so much. I'm lost for words when it comes to all this madness. And did I mean your first album, Game Over, was released in 1986, and it has songs like After the Holocaust, Radiation Sickness,
Hmm.
and stuff like that. And were you guys really afraid of the nukes and the upcoming World War III kind of thing?
Well, I'm not sure if it was as much fear as maybe we were just trying to warn people that there is indeed a possibility of this. And we also knew that as musicians that we weren't going to have a direct influence on politicians. We were just trying to get people in that were listening to our music to think a little more and just be aware. We weren't trying to force our opinions on people because this is something I never liked in the punk rock scene when somebody is yelling at you like your mother or a school teacher and saying this is right and this is wrong.
Yeah.
We took advantage of a unique situation where a lot of metalheads had not been exposed to, let's say, more thoughtful lyrics, and we're just used to regular heavy metal, swords and stuff. So we just wanted to maybe raise some points and bring attention to some people about some things they had not thought about. But yeah, some of it sure was, oh shit, this could be it. So
Yeah.
let's make sure people are aware of shit. But we knew we couldn't change anything directly.
Yeah, of course, but I really think that thrash metal was kind of anti-nuclear movement because all the bands from the 80s were kind of against the nuclear energy, nuclear bombs, whatever. And I think that a lot of it comes from Chernobyl, 1986, just like when Game Over was released.
Well, Chernobyl was definitely a very sobering event, when you find out what happens when you are not being careful, when you're using nuclear power and you're not taking all the precautions and making sure that this very dangerous form of energy is being used wisely with all the proper protections against, what happens, which was a very dangerous leak of very dangerous chemicals that can really fuck people up forever and fuck up the land and everything. So when something like Chernobyl happens, that really, yeah, it makes you think like, you see, if you
Yeah,
fucking people aren't careful, I mean, I'm sure to this day they're still having issues there in the land,
yeah, of
and
course. Horrible.
and yeah, birth defects being passed down from radiation and all sorts of horror.
And you know that like Fukushima Daiichi's fuel, I think it was burning in 2017 or 18. I mean, so these people are really crazy about their, not caring about anything other than themselves and their profits.
Yeah, it really gets crazy when you think about it, like misplaced priorities and how governments just all they really care about is making sure, okay, this is a source of energy, so if a few people get sick, whatever, fuck them. So this kind of non-caring attitude.
Yeah, and this album cover for Game Over was done by Ed Repka. Did you guys tell him what to do, or he just went with the flow?
I'm trying to remember the specifics because this is now like I don't know 33 years ago, but I believe we just told him the concept of what we were because there wasn't obviously the song Game Over was on the next record, so we didn't have lyrics, and of course this song had no lyrics, but we just basically described, what the album title was and what we were picturing. And I can't remember if maybe he had a couple of different versions or not. I just remember we looked at that and said, "Yep, that's it, perfect."
Yeah, and did it help you guys, to raise your popularity through this album cover? Do you think that it's paid out in the end?
Uh, I've never really thought of this. I mean, I suppose it helped. I mean, we would hope really that the main reason that we would have success would be because, of our music and lyrics and everything. But obviously, the album artwork is a visual component of the general, package or whatever word you want to use. So, and of course, Ed Repka had at the time done a lot of really cool thrash metal records. So, this was very common back then. Same just like with an album producer. If there's somebody who's doing a very good job, then they say, "Hey, we want this guy,"
Yeah.
and that's how things work.
And I've just read your book, Perpetual Conversion. I think it's really, really great book that
Ah,
everybody.
thank you.
I mean, I bought it like 2 years ago, something like that. And I just saw that people hated Nuclear Assault because of the song My America. What was like the deal with it?
Oh well, that was kind of more like an S.O.D. song. That song was not serious. That song was, that was just more fun. In America, but in the States, there was a newspaper. There was a fake, funny kind of newspaper called the Weekly World News that they sold in the supermarkets when you're waiting to buy your stuff, and it's on the supermarket checkout line. And in this newspaper, they had a column called "My America" by a fake person whose name was Ed Anger. Anger like being angry all the time, and it was just. Basically, the lyrics to that song was just basically taking one of this guy's columns and putting it in a song. So it wasn't very serious. So if people had a problem with nuclear assault because they thought that we were some pro USA nationalists because of this song, then obviously we didn't make it clear enough that this was not heartfelt and was just a parody and was just more like the SOD approach, which is just be obnoxious. But we
Yeah.
thought people would realize it was a joke. So, oh well.
And how come that Nuclear Assault is one of the few bands that were accepted by this hardcore scene in the CBGBs? I mean, there was a lot of backlash between the metalheads and skinheads, hardcore kids, whatnot.
I think the reason that we were accepted a lot by the people in the CBGB's New York hardcore scene is because John and I were regulars there for the every Sunday hardcore matinee. For years we would go there every Sunday and watch bands play, and people saw us there. So they, I think the people there, the hardcore people or skinheads or whatever, realized that we were not trying to exploit New York hardcore or that it was a fake thing for us to
Yeah,
try to get more attention. They saw that we truly enjoyed the music and the lyrics, and so they accepted us as a band mixing hardcore with the metal because they knew that it was real for us because we were
yeah,
there all the time.
yeah, right.
So I think that explains the explanation there.
Yeah, but you know what's funny? That Scott Ian had death threats from these hardcore kids back in the day because he was a long-haired metalhead, and
Well, Scott also, well, I mean, think when Anthrax was doing stuff like putting the New York Hardcore logo on their T-shirts,
Yeah,
and
yeah. Hmm.
I think it was more that it wasn't just because he was a guy with long hair. It was because I think some people in the hardcore scene were of the opinion that the Anthrax guys were just kind of using hardcore as some cool thing, where they could tell that, with Nuclear Assault, it was a, a more genuine and heartfelt, I think.
Yeah, but these guys were hardcore kids were always like hotheads. I mean, I never liked their attitudes because if you have an attitude, you're just, just they work en masse. They will never be free thinking individuals, which was kind of stupid.
Well, yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, a lot of people in the hardcore scene could be very judgmental and closed-minded and also kind of hypocritical, because in their lyrics and their interviews, they would tell people, don't judge other people by their appearance, and then they would look at you and go, fucking metalhead, get out of here. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But look, I understand people like that. Sometimes it's because they're 16 years old and they don't know any better. But if they're 30 years old and they're doing that, maybe that is a little fucking lame. I don't know. You
Yeah,
know?
right. And
Mhm.
what about the song "Critical Mass"? What was like the message behind it? Because I think it was really big back in the day, in the 80s.
Critical. Well, I was never the lyricist. That was mostly John's job. But I could tell you that critical mass in general is just about the damage that was being done to our environment by various types of fossil fuel energies,
Yeah,
and just that, and the words critical mass means that it will reach a point one day when it reaches what is called critical mass, when it's too late to fix it and we're all fucked forever. So,
so it's still
um,
relevant.
yes, it's still relevant. There's a lot of songs today that are still relevant that were written in the 1980s. Some are more relevant with the current president, and yeah, so some things never change.
Yeah, and it's funny because when that song was released, like 6 months before, was this Exxon Valdez oil spill, and I think that you guys, criticized that.
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. What?
The Exxon Valdez oil spill. I mean, it happened like
Oh, yes, yes.
6 months before the song. I mean, the album was released, so it's kind of you guys reflected that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was actually very current in our minds when that happened. Yeah, because that was quite a fucking oil spill, and it was not the first. So that might have been the oil spill when we said another oil spill, because that was a
Yeah,
real bad one.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I remember that. I think the captain was like drunk or something.
I don't know where it happened, but it killed a lot of fish and other living creatures.
Yeah, no, I remember because that was a very big one.
Yeah, and you guys played in West Berlin, right?
We played in Berlin before the wall went down in 80. I don't know. It was obviously sometime because 87 was the first time I went to Europe, and 89 obviously was when the wall went down. But yes, I was in Nuclear Assault played in Berlin where we had to go through the old East, to get there because, geographically, Berlin used to be the one little
I
part of Western Germany that was located obviously closer to, Poland and Czech and all that. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, that was very weird because I remember we went to the wall and I looked over it and it was like, looking into like a black and white movie or something. It was very strange.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
so true, black and white communism and whatnot. So, was that like the sobering experience for you, or because you saw it from the wall?
Yeah, I remember just how interesting it was, and I remember thinking, God, I wish we could go play all these places, and all these places I've been to now. I wish we could go play in Hungary and Czech Republic and all that, and so I think it's great that all that has been achieved, and I mean, and I have been to Serbia a couple of times too.
Yeah, but we weren't, Yugoslavia wasn't a part of Soviet Union. And did you guys play, in Soviet Union or not? You, with nuclear?
Um, no, we never did. Brutal Truth played St. Petersburg in 2013, but obviously this is 2013 when it was just regular democracy and all that. But no, never played
Democracy.
anywhere. Nope, never played behind the anywhere. I mean, like I said, there was just West Berlin, but no, never played inside anything that was considered, the DDR or anything that was the USSR back then.
Yeah.
Any of these countries, or
And
I think
continue, please.
I was just saying, I imagine the paperwork back then, probably to get a visa, would have been extremely difficult, but I have no idea.
Yeah. And do you like pot, man?
Ah, yes, I do.
And how long do you? I mean, when did you take your first shot of weed?
Oh, probably with my sister when I was like 13 or 14 years old or something like that. So maybe 40 years ago.
And does marijuana help you with, with your music? And do you get creativity out of it?
Well, it's not vital. It's not absolutely necessary, but perhaps it makes um, certain things a little more creative or different than the original intention. It's not, like I said, not necessary, but it's definitely like an added spice if you're cooking or something that'll make you certain parts of your brain go, oh shit, see, I didn't think of that. So, um, yeah, yes and no. Not absolutely necessary, but helpful.
And then in your book, you say that you were smoking pot with Cliff Burton.
Yeah. Back then, I knew Cliff when he was around, and yeah, we did a little relaxing. Yeah, sure.
So what was he like? I mean, such a legendary figure.
What I remember of Cliff Burton, he was just a super cool dude, very laid back. He was kind of quite different than the rest of those guys, and I think he was kind of like the person who kept them kind of down to earth and normal. So after that horrible, tragic events, that also explains maybe why the band changed. I think um, he was kind of like their anchor. He was a really normal dude, and I don't know. I should probably stop there.
And were you influenced by his bass playing?
Somewhat. I think by the time I saw Cliff play, I was already pretty much set up with a lot of influences like Lemmy and Steve Harris and Geddy Lee. But seeing that Cliff play with even more distortion and use the wah-wah was definitely very interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was good. He made a lot of noise, and of course, I still use distortion now. So, but yeah, he was a great bass player.
And can you tell me something about the Crab Society demo?
Well, the Crab Society originally was just a little joke band that I did with Craig Satari, who's the bass player of Sick of It All, and he's been in lots of hardcore bands. And basically, we wanted to make a little noisecore thing to have a whole bunch of songs that were like 5 seconds long that was recorded in a very extreme way. And this is before bands like AC and all that. I
Yeah.
think I don't think we invented anything, but I think we wanted to take, some hardcore bands had 2 second songs, and we said, let's make an entire recording only in this style and make it sound really fucking nasty while we're doing it. And that's what happened.
Yeah, and Shane Embry says like that he was a huge fan of that demo, so it kind of
Yeah.
influenced British grindcore.
Well, I'm very proud of that, but he has told me that. But yeah, it was just for fun and just to make some noise and have a good time.
Yeah, and what is like the main difference between American and British grindcore, in your opinion?
British grindcore was always American grindcore. I think we just something about Americans, the way we made music. It was like we tried to be very tight and professional. And I don't know. I think it's just I don't know what it is. It's just a thing with a being a different personalities in different countries. I'm not saying this very well, but British grindcore, when you heard it, it was always really noisy and brutal and rumbly, and that was a great quality. I think when you heard like the first Brutal Truth album, you heard us trying to be a tiny bit more clinical and make sure that the production and the playing that you could hear everything. Because
Yeah.
our opinion was that it should be, it'll sound even more fast and brutal if you can hear every note. But the British, like with Napalm and Carcass, their approach was more just fucking just blaze through it and do that for the glory and just smash it. So
Yeah,
it's just different styles, different influences.
yeah, and how did the S.O.D? I mean, how was it formed? How did that happen?
How did what?
How did S.O.D happen? I mean, how did you
Oh,
guys start playing?
well, I just got a phone call from Scott Ian in April 1985 that said, "Hey, do you want to play in a band with me and Charlie? We're just going to have some fun and play some fast hardcore." So I said, sure, because this had been a year and 3 months after I had no longer been in Anthrax.
Mm-hmm.
And this is actually pretty interesting, man. We are right now 35 years directly past the time in late January 1984 when I was told to leave Anthrax and I
Yeah.
formed Nuclear Assault. It was January 84 and now it's January 2019. So this is interesting too.
Yeah, and in your book you say that basically Anthrax guys ripped you off. I mean, they didn't include your name on the albums like Spreading the Disease and Among the Living.
Yeah, well, some of those things got sorted out. But yeah, originally I was not getting all the credit I deserved for stuff that I contributed to creatively. So that was true, yes.
Yeah,
And I just made it happen.
yeah, and when it comes to S.O.D's Speak English or Die, I've read that Euronymous was a fan of that record. Is that
Who?
true? Euronymous, you know.
Well, Euronymous.
Yeah.
Well, I never knew Euronymous personally, but I'm friends with like Necro Butcher, and obviously, people like Attila. I know all those guys, and they said that yes, at the time that S.O.D was a what's we call it, kind of almost like an influence on Mayhem when they were just more into like thrash and not completely possessed yet, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think they like the distorted bass sounds and the stuff like that. And if you listen to the song "Death Crush," the title track, I think it almost sounds like an S.O.D riff played backwards or something. In my opinion.
Yeah, and how big was S.O.D in the 80s?
S.O.D was pretty fucking big, especially you have to remember that this was just a joke for us. When Scott called me, he said, "Hey, we're going to go in the studio, write a couple of songs." Are you okay? Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I was talking to my wife.
Yeah.
I heard pain. Um, anyway, SOD. So the idea was just to have a little fun, go in the studio for 3 days, write a bunch of fast, stupid songs, and just release it, and then that would be it.
Yeah.
but it kind of took on a life of its own because Scott had some of the music written, and then when he called me up at this time, he said, "We need to write some more music to make a complete record, so I need you to come up here," because they were in the studio doing Spreading the Disease at the same studio, Pyramid Sound. So I went up there, wrote some music, helped him write songs like Milk and all that other stuff to complete the record, and then we recorded it in July. And all of a sudden, when we were mixing it, we realized this really sounds pretty fucking good. You know, this is supposed to be just a little punk rock record, but the production is coming out very well. So let's see what happens. And then, yeah, boom, out of nowhere, had this tremendous impact, and we just thought it was pretty funny because we had no idea. We wrote these offensive lyrics just as a joke. So all of a sudden, people are like, "Oh, do you mean these lyrics?" We're like, "No, we no idea that anybody would ever read them." Yeah,
You
so
guys kind of created a monster that has a life of its
oh,
own.
absolutely. A lot of bands kind of followed this direction. A lot of metal bands got into hardcore, and hopefully nobody took the lyrics too seriously, and hopefully nobody was inspired in a negative way, like thinking that we meant these lyrics. It was just to be as rude and obnoxious as possible because there were some people in the hardcore scene who we thought were overly sensitive and were always complaining. So we said, "Okay, wait till they see this," and ha ha ha, and then
Yeah.
that's what happened. Really, yeah, they deserved it, man. It's just too fucking serious. It's like these kids today, some of them are just too serious all the time, and you got to have a little fun and tell a stupid joke once in a while.
Yeah, but I think that kids nowadays are too sensitive. I mean, not just the kids, but the people. They're oversensitive. You can say anything, because
Well,
somebody will get offended or whatever.
that's what I meant. I meant sensitive more than serious. I meant that, these days you say anything and they're like, "Oh, you can't say that, this is racist or that's sexist or, you're offending this person because they're a vegan or whatever." And it's like, look, I'm a good person. So
Yeah,
I can't concern myself all day with who I'm going to offend because I am not a racist or any of that stuff, but I also can't walk around all day worrying about, every word out of my mouth because someone's going to jump on it and accuse me of something. So I don't care.
yeah, and they call it freedom of speech.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. I just ignore it mostly and do my own thing.
Yeah, of course. And how many shows did S.O.D have back in the 80s? I mean,
Not really that many, maybe like 11 or 12. I don't remember exactly. I'm sure it's all on record somewhere. But when the record came out in, what was it, September 85, we just did I don't know, about 8 or 9 shows, maybe a couple more the next year. And then we had to stop. And then we just did a show once in a while after that. So in the 80s, maybe 12 or 15 shows, absolutely total.
yeah, and you did like shows with suicidal tendencies and I think
Overkill too.
overkill.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on Wikipedia it says like Motorhead and Plasmatics. I don't know if that's true or not.
We played with Motorhead and Wendy O. It wasn't the Plasmatics proper, it was Wendy O's band. And then also on the Cro-Mags, that was on the same bill. There's a
Yeah.
cool T-shirt of that show because
Awesome.
it's from the poster art.
Awesome. And you used to know Lemmy, right?
I wouldn't say that I was a friend of Lemmy's, but I had met him a few times,
Yeah.
and he was a cool dude. But I'm not going to lie and say, "Yep, he was my buddy," because that would be very much an exaggeration.
Yeah, of course. And did SOD had problems with PMRC back in the day?
No, we were not popular enough back in the day to get the attention of these PMRC people. I think they were more concerned about Twisted Sister or whatever. I'm sure if they knew of our existence, then we would be in big trouble. But no, I guess you would say under the radar, so it was no
Yeah.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah, and on the 20 Years of Dysfunction DVD, there is like a bootleg from some show in 1985 where Billy Milano says like, "This is for Tipper Gore. It's called Kill Yourself" or something like that. I find it
Right.
funny.
Well, yeah, that song's always great for dedications.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about live at Budokan? Was that show
Well,
recorded in at Ritz or?
yes, that was Last Budokan was just a cheap trick joke. Um, yeah, it was recorded at the Ritz in New York City. We just called it that, and it's funny to this day. A lot of people would get confused about that and say, "Well, what about your Japanese live record from '92?" And I'm like, "Nope, nope, it's just called that."
Yeah,
That
that's
was every once in a while we would come back and do a really cool show with some cool bands, and that made it more interesting, and made the band, I think, more, I don't know, valuable or in demand or whatever. If we would have just kept playing all the time, it would have got boring. But just to occasionally do a show, and when a rare show, then that made it more of a special event. So we just did every 7 years or something like that. We were busy with our other bands, so it was okay.
yeah. And how big was Brutal Truth when it came out? I mean, as a band.
Brutal Truth was did pretty well for a band, especially the Noisy Bastards we were near the end. Um,
Yeah.
but we were mostly known as a grindcore band. There were some people in death metal that liked us too, especially our earlier material. But we were never going to get that big because we got more and more extreme and noisy and fast with every release. So obviously we weren't shooting for maybe selling a million records, but I think for our category, if you want to call it that, like grindcore, I think
Yeah.
we're near the top of this. When people talk about grindcore, they say Napalm Death, Terrorizer, Brutal Truth, Repulsion. So if we're in this category, Carcass, then that's very flattering. So
Yeah.
I think we did pretty well with that.
I think you guys raised the bar of extreme metal music.
Well,
Definitely.
this is what we were talking about before, like the American versus the English approach. When we did grindcore as Americans, we made it faster and tighter. Not intentionally, that's just what we did because that's how we roll as um, citizens of the USA. I don't know why. That was, and we weren't in a race. We weren't trying to say, "Ha, we will play faster than Napalm Death and steal their fans." It wasn't anything like this. It was healthy competition.
Yeah, and
Just like in the old days when Nuclear Assault heard like Dark Angel or Sodom and said, "Shit, dude, we better speed up." You know,
yeah.
it's a good thing.
And I think that this competition kept it alive and well because if it wasn't for that, everybody would suck at some point. But that's what made these people better musicians, basically.
Well, yeah, because it was a healthy rivalry.
Yeah.
There wasn't any negative feelings. Maybe a tiny bit of jealousy, but in a healthy way. To use this energy wisely and say like, "Oh shit, no, Slayer just got on the fucking tour with blah blah blah. Man, that should have been us. So let's fucking write more better songs or blah 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 or faster songs. I don't know." So
And which scene was more violent when it comes to thrash metal, East Coast or West Coast? Because West Coast Bay Area was pretty brutal, if you ask me.
uh, well, the West Coast, yeah, you had all that crazy brutal stuff with Exodus with Bailoff and cutting themselves, but in the East Coast, we also mixed our thrash metal with hardcore, and we had some skinheads coming down to the show. But of course, this was good violence. This was not negative violence. This was just kind of intensity.
Good
So
friend.
it depends if you're talking about good violence or just crazy, dangerous, stupid shit.
Yeah.
Then I think then California wins.
And
Yeah.
why? I mean, I really don't understand why people hated each other's, just by their music tastes. I really don't get it.
Well, they would have found some other excuse to hate each other, maybe their appearance or something. And I don't know. Some people just need a reason to feel different or think that they're better than somebody, and maybe that's how they express it, or they're just stupid or immature. I don't know.
Yeah. And you mentioned Paul Bailoff, and I think that he created this kill a poser kind of thing. So, what is your Paul Bailoff story?
Well, I met Bailoff a few times back in the day, and he was just a super cool dude. He was definitely nuts, but in a good way.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I don't remember any particular story. Just having a good time, and just of course, I didn't party as much as he did, but just hanging out at some shows that we played together and just having a good time backstage. There isn't like a Paul Bailoff story, like he went crazy and stabbed some dude and that was wearing a Poison shirt or anything.
Yeah.
So don't want to disappoint you there.
And what about Jeff Hanneman?
Well, I knew Jeff. I mean, Nuclear Assault and Slayer did some shows together back in the late '80s, and I knew him after that. And he was a super cool guy too. I mean, unfortunately, his some of his habits got the best of him later in life, I guess.
Yeah, too bad.
But yeah. But no, he whatchamacallit, when I knew him, he was just a cool guy. Of course, he liked to have a drink, but we all did then.
Yeah. And did Nuclear Assault have some kind of rival band back in the day?
Uh, Not really that I can think of. I mean, when we started out, there was other bands in the area like Carnivore and Overkill and Whiplash, but these were bands we were friends with. It was just wasn't there was just healthy competition,
Yeah.
but nothing too much.
Huh. And it's good to know that you played with bands like Dark Angel and Autopsy.
Oh well, sometimes I played with other bands if I was asked to, or if I was helping out my friends, and I just enjoy playing music, and sometimes I like to do it with different people if I get this opportunity, really. So that was all that was. Just
You have some, something exclusive, some new album coming out because you have such bunch of bands, that you're playing with.
uh, I don't know how exclusive it is. I mean, you obviously are already familiar with Blurring, and we had our Cloud Burner come out,
Yeah.
but um, we are going to be going back in the studio to record a couple of new songs to do a split with a band called Cognizant in New York, from New York City, but that studio time has not been booked yet, and we still have to. Our vocalist still has to work on one song, but that is definitely something I've never mentioned in any interviews. I'm just not sure yet about the label,
Yeah.
but it's exclusive because it hasn't been mentioned yet.
Cool, man. Cool. So thank you for your time, man, so much. Have a nice day.
Okay, cool, man. Okay, you too, man.
Hey people, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Agoraphobic News. Please like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel to help us grow. You can also support us on Patreon by becoming one of our patrons. And big shout out to our patron Season of Mist for supporting our work. So stay tuned for another interview and keep it metal.